So we are going to have a look at this heavily trimmed section of a Missouri Senate hearing on Senate Bill 860, a bill that proposes banning geoengineering and weather modification in the state of Missouri. The footage you're about to see comes directly from the committee hearing itself. I've cut the meeting down to, I would say, the most relevant exchanges, so you can hear the arguments being presented to the lawmakers without having to sit through the entire session, but I will leave the link to the full video in the video description, he says. In this hearing, Missouri Senator Mike Moon introduces the bill, followed by testimony from activists, health practitioners, and the residents who claim atmospheric spraying, cloud seeding, and other forms of geoengineering could be impacting the environment, agriculture, and public health. They reference government acknowledgements of geoengineering programs, discuss chemicals such as aluminium, silver iodide, and other particulates, and debate whether or not states should move to ban atmospheric modification experiments within their borders. Watch the clips carefully. I'll pause at a few key moments just to break down what's being said and why it matters. Let's start with Senator Moon introducing SB 860.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Mike Moon. I represent the Missouri 29th Senatorial District, here today to present Senate Bill 860. And I don't know how many of us are old enough to remember when we were in grade school and had the mercury thermometers. Remember if one broke in the classroom and they would form the circles of the round balls, and not knowing any better, we'd pick them up and put them in our hands and, press them, and they would make multiple mercury balls. Well, it wasn't until later years that it was determined that this mercury wasn't very good for us.
What you've just heard is Senator Moon framing the issue through a really simple comparison: mercury. He's pointing out how substances once considered to be safe later turned out to be toxic. His argument is that atmospheric interventions could potentially follow the same pattern. First dismissed, then later recognised as harmful. Immediately after this, he moves into claims about government acknowledgement of geoengineering and weather modification programs.
The EPA executive Lee Zeldin has admitted that planes are leaving or actually injecting the atmosphere with different chemicals for different purposes. One is to direct the sun rays away from the Earth to cool the Earth, and others are putting chemicals in the air to create rain. And so I found that, I think it was back in 1940, I don't remember the man's name right offhand, but he was granted a patent for what is termed cloud seeding. Advance a few more years, and in Vietnam they used the same technology for weather warfare to create monsoon-like instances. And there hasn't been anything substantive come from the North Carolina Chimney Hills floods or the Guadalupe floods, but there is some question about whether or not that was man-made. And so when you take what Lee Zeldin has put together, or has admitted, that the military and U.S. government is complicit in advancing some of these so-called theories, there is admission that cloud seeding is something, it does work. Now, some of the chemicals that are being put in the air are aluminum. Remember when I was talking about, or the mercury, I should say, and mercury is also poisonous. Aluminum is poisonous to humans, and also silver iodide is one of the main chemicals they put in the air to create the clouds, which ultimately would create rain. If you look it up, it's poisonous to humans too. And so my question is, why would we do that to ourselves? There is some speculation that these chemicals will actually affect crop production, and many of us have farms. I grow grass in particularly, but Mr. Chairman, you grow other crops too, and we do need water. But if I'm not mistaken, it's like land. They're not making any more land, and they're not making any more water on the earth. With the rain particularly, it's just, where's it going to fall? And could these cloud seeders say, over this farm, we're going to cause it to rain, And would that negatively impact another farm where they might not get rain that might naturally come? So putting all this together, we're asking that our government take a look at it to do some study at the very least to determine what is going on. We actually want it stopped. And I have some witnesses here who will go into more detail about what they found and provide some, I think, some pretty interesting facts that they've come across. One of the things we'd like to do is add one more person to the Water Commission so that they can be a voice for protecting the people from pollution and is affecting the ground, the water, and also the air. And so that kind of is in a nutshell, and I'd be happy to answer questions. But we have some witnesses lined up here who I think can give you a lot more detail than I provided.
Now the hearing shifts from the Senator introducing the bill to public testimony supporting it. The next speaker represents a grassroots organisation that says public concern about geoengineering has exploded, citing 140,000 supporters and millions of views online. Nice for some. He also claims that multiple states are already moving legislation to restrict these practices. Listen to how he tries to establish that this topic is not just a fringe theory, but something acknowledged by officials and scientists.
My name is Michael Hogan, and I'm the co-founder of a grassroots organization called Missouri Clean Skies. 8 short months ago, I went from ordinary Missouri citizen, a minister, business owner, husband and father, to political activist. The cause of my sudden involvement was my tremendous personal concern over the topic of discussion today. In a matter of months, my organization has garnered the support of 140,000 followers on social media and over 21 million content views. Why the explosion in support? Because the people want something done about this issue. Here with me are 10,000 petition signatures from citizens. Also with me is a petition addressed to Missouri legislators by 24 medical doctors, including 7 from right here in Missouri, calling on you for action. Senate Bill 860 is a bill that bans geoengineering and weather modification in the state of Missouri. Why is this necessary? Why have other states like Tennessee, Florida, Louisiana recently passed legislation on this? And why are there more than 30 other states that have legislation pending? It's because the people do not give consent to environmental experiments that pollute our air, water, and soil without their knowledge, concern, or concern for their well-being. It's because, how do we know that this is happening? Is it just a conspiracy theory? Where's the proof? Well, first of all, we're not talking about the debate over chemtrails and contrails. We're only interested in provable facts, okay? So let's start with Lee Zeldin, head of the EPA, who recently said, and I quote, "Geoengineering is real. It is something that the U.S. government has acknowledged for a long time. Solar radiation modification, stratospheric aerosol injection, marine cloud brightening, weather modification, cloud seeding." He goes on to say that it's being funded by the government. So right there in one sentence, the idea that this is a conspiracy theory is completely debunked. Today, the goal of geoengineering projects is to spray 1 million tons of pollution, nanoparticulates of metals and sulfuric acid each year into our stratosphere to reflect sunlight and to dim the sun. Leading scientists like Dr. David Keith say that the idea is to mimic the effect that a volcanic eruption has on cooling our planet. And this plan, as crazy as it sounds, has been adopted by global leaders all over the world, while at the same time admitting that it's extremely risky and has unintended consequences that would be enormous.
Here the discussion gets more specific. Lawmakers begin questioning which companies might actually be conducting these activities and whether any of them are actually operating in Missouri. One company mentioned is Make Sunsets, which publicly sells balloon launches that release particles intended to reflect the sunlight, essentially small-scale solar geoengineering. The key issue here raised really is enforcement. If spraying happens up in the upper atmosphere, how can a single state regulate it?
What specific companies are spraying these chemicals right now in Missouri?
Yeah. Well, Makes Sunsets is a company out of California, and we don't know exactly where they're sending their balloons, but they are spreading this stuff in the air You can go on their website and actually pay and get a balloon in your name to be spraying chemicals into our stratosphere as we
Okay,
speak.
but we don't know if they're doing that here in our state yet.
I don't know that we can find that out, or we could probably contact them and ask them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the only company that you're aware of that may
That
be
is-
doing that in Missouri?
That I know of, that's a private company. Now, Starta Solutions is about to start in they say, as soon as April. And this is a fleet of planes that's for profit, and they had an $80 million grant to do this. And,
Okay, so could you get us a list of the states that have already done this and made
Yes.
that a crime?
It's
Because you said Florida, are there
Florida,
others?
Louisiana, and Tennessee have already. And we like to be the next, but there's 30 other states that have laws pending on this, legislation pending. The country of Mexico banned geoengineering for the entire country.
Any further questions for this witness? Senator Berger.
You know, and actually, someone called me about this, and I asked them this question. But if I look up in the skies, I live in southeast Missouri. How do I know if they're over Missouri, Illinois, or Arkansas when I look up?
How do you know?
If they're over Missouri, Illinois,
Yeah.
or Arkansas, I live right on the border.
Yeah.
How do I know that?
They're not. I don't think they care about states. How do you know? I mean,
How would we ban it? I mean, how would I know it's been banned over Missouri when I look up
Yeah.
and I see that chemtrail or
Yeah.
plume or whatever it
well,
may be?
let me say this. We're not talking about chemtrails and contrails. I'm not talking about that in this bill.
Okay.
Because there's debate over that. I do believe that I know that the EPA, NASA, and NOAA has a report on this, and they say it's persistent contrails caused by pollution that's coming out of the planes, including all these metals, aluminum, barium, strontium, and all these other metals, as well as high levels of sulfur dioxide that's creating persistent clouds. Okay, that's something we're taking to the EPA and the FAA after this committee hearing. And we have a petition to them. So that is another issue. But what we're looking at is we're looking at companies and the government who's spraying up in the stratosphere, which is higher than what we can actually see. Stratosphere starts at about 50,000 feet and goes up for miles. So
you call it contrails?
well, people call, the government calls it persistent contrails, right?
Okay.
But we say they're persistent chemtrails.
So if this bill would pass,
Yes.
would we still see those things?
Yes, we would, and the reason is because, again, the EPA and the FAA are aware of this, and they have a report on this, and I can share that report with you, where they
Okay.
explain what's going on, and that is another issue that we must fix. They know that we must fix. In fact, they're saying that it's causing a net warming effect, and it's an issue. And so we're not looking for conspiracy theories. We're looking for the facts, okay? And so I'm not going to stand here and tell you that all of that is stratospheric aerosol injections, because those are in the troposphere, lower than that. And so that's commercial aviation without a doubt. So it's an issue for sure, but that's not an issue that you're having to deal with today. What we're trying to do is ban stratospheric aerosol injections from them specifically spraying out of nozzles out of planes that are up in the stratosphere, or balloons, or whatever else it is. What we want to do, we cannot have private companies or even our government spraying our stratosphere with pollution to block out our sun. Did anybody here want our sun blocked out?
Later in the hearing, testimony shifts towards health and environmental concerns. Speakers argue that heavy metals such as aluminium, barium, and silver compounds can accumulate in the body and the ecosystems. Some claim that this could interact with other environmental exposures, like electromagnetic fields, or affect the soil microbiomes and crop health. Whether lawmakers agree or not, the central theme remains the same. People are asking whether atmospheric modification should occur without public consent or transparency. Let's watch the final testimony and the closing remarks.
Hold on.
So,
And we all want what's
we need
best
a
for everybody,
statement.
too. I mean, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Is the federal government looking at this, or is our bills being produced,
Yes.
introduced on the federal levels, too?
It's there has been a bill in the House that is introduced, and it's been to committee, and it's pending.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Joe Horn. I'm a board-certified holistic health practitioner through the American Association of Drugless Practitioners, and I serve as the CEO of Skywatch Television, a syndicated global news program reaching over 100 million homes worldwide. I'm here today as a 19-year resident of Missouri in support of Senate Bill 860 to ban geoengineering in our state. In my work as a health educator and researcher, and through years of tracking public health trends in the U.S. and abroad, I've observed a troubling pattern, a dramatic increase in people struggling with heavy metal burden, impaired methylation, liver toxicity, and autoimmune conditions. These are no longer rare. Unfortunately, these are becoming alarmingly common. Decades of medical literature show that heavy metals such as aluminum, barium, and silver compounds are biologically active. They accumulate in tissues, interfere with detoxification, disrupt immune regulation, and stress the liver and nervous system. This is why scientists and medical professionals have raised questions about large-scale atmospheric interventions. Even small exposures to biologically active substances can carry unknown risks across populations and ecosystems. Geoengineering involves deliberately introducing materials into the stratosphere to alter climate conditions such as dimming sunlight or modifying precipitation. And unlike pollution reduction, which removes harmful substances, these interventions and biologically active materials to complex human and ecological systems raise real public health concerns. From a health perspective, this also raises an ethical question. If we're already facing a chronic disease epidemic driven in part by toxic load, impaired detoxification, and immune dysfunction, does it really make sense to then add even more chemical exposure that people cannot opt out of? In medicine, informed consent matters. Populations deserve transparency and protection, especially when exposures are involuntary and affect children, pregnant women, and those with compromised health. I respectfully urge you to vote yes on Senate Bill 860 to ban geoengineering in Missouri, standing with your constituents to protect our air and water quality and to safeguard public health. I speak on behalf of tens of thousands of Missourians who expect their voices to be heard and their health protected. We will not be ignored, and our commitment to this issue grows louder every day. Thank you.
Do you really think it does any good at all to pass this in the state of Missouri? I mean, the earth rotates, we move constantly. What good is it going to do for our state to ban it? Do you think it's going to do any good, I guess?
I do. I think on lots of levels.
Thank you so much. I am in support of the bill SB860. My name is Robert Workman. I live in Winsfield, Missouri. I'm a certified building biologist, environmental consultant. I have a second more advanced degree certification in electromagnetic radiation specialty. And I have over 200 hours working with an electrical engineer in electrical measurements, advanced spectrum analysis, and oscilloscopes. In other words, I can see the electrical pollution caused by nonlinear loads, also caused by switchboard power supplies, in every smart meter and every digital meter. I'll get to a point. I am a trained radio frequency measuring meters from 20 megahertz to 40 gigahertz. I've conducted over 230 surveys in Missouri, Illinois, Tennessee, and Michigan. Recommend specific mitigation plans for the clients who are injured from this trespassing technology. I've been injured by the smart meter electromagnetic field from cell towers and smart trespassing devices. I have a confirmation from 2 medical doctors. I had Lyme disease, kidney failure, loss of hearing in the right ear, and just a few of my injuries. My right ear has been cooked. You can see in the picture right here. Okay. And the heavy metals were a big component of that. So electromagnetic fields and heavy metals will react together, act almost like a conductor. Heavy metals like barium, strontium, aluminum, magnetite, they are coming out of the sky, will get into the food supply, water, and the lungs. This will create an environment for the EMF that vibrates these metals and recirculate, which will get back into the blood and cause illness. Heavy metals act like a conductor and heat up to sensitive areas like the brain. The FCC guidelines have maximum exposure limits of 6 minutes per day with no heavy metals in that brain.
My name is Jamie Woodle. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach and health educator with a Master of Science in Health Education. I'm also an Air Force veteran, an active duty spouse, and a resident of Stone County, Missouri. Exposure to heavy metals such as silver and aluminum is cumulative and well documented to pose risks to human health, but I don't think any of you are here opposing that today. I think we all understand that. I would like to bring to your attention silver in particular that they use for cloud seeding and weather modification. Silver has natural antimicrobial properties, which can actually impact the soil. There's so much about different microbiomes that is just now coming forward in science that we are discovering. It is the new frontier that is now being researched in our soil, in our bodies, in our lungs. So if we're breathing in the soil and it is if we are breathing in the air with the silver and it is accumulating in the soil, and is impacting the microbiome of the soil, we don't know how that is going to affect the crops, which have their own ecosystem equally with our bodies. The people of Missouri have little, if any, ability to opt out of what falls from the sky or enters their environment. And because of that, I respectfully ask you to please vote yes on Senate Bill 860 and to stand with the people you represent protecting their health, because we're all residents and we're all here, and it's our children and their future as well. And you have the power today to do something about that.
Thanks. I'm a Missouri citizen, long time. My name is Suzanne Renard Makarevich. Thanks, Senator Moon. Thanks, Reverend Hogan, and everybody who spoke. We have to stop all tinkering with our skies. As everybody has said so far, nobody can get out from under the sky. It falls on all of us. Every fix that we try working against nature backfires every time. Every intervention by human ingenuity that violates the rules of nature creates a cascade of further interventions. Just like in the medical field, it can happen. And it happens in every interaction we have with the environment. Controlling the weather may be the most elemental, no pun intended, crude approach imaginable. Creating rain saturated with aluminum, barium, silver iodide, and all of these other toxic compounds or elements only worsens the health of our soil and increases human exposure to known neurotoxic effects discussed so well by the doctors, leading to diseases like Alzheimer's. Autopsies of Alzheimer brains have shown, almost every one, high concentration of aluminum. That's not seen in a normal brain, in a healthy brain. We lived in the National Forest in Missouri for a while. In Mark Twain National Forest, we farm organically. We've seen the weakening vigor of the trees with each rain. And it's been going on for years, but it's really accelerating with the bioaccumulation of this. The forests aren't being seeded with things from below. They're getting poison from above. And these are at the vanguard, these are the first suffering of what we can see. So to protect the organic health of our gardens, to protect our children, we have to stop the poison spraying of our skies. And this is a good first step.
Comments?
Yeah, thank you for allowing that extensive time for us to flesh this out a little bit more. The questions we're asking, I'd like to get back with Senator Washington, Senator Crawford, and any others who might have questions about this, about the enforcement of it. Senator Crawford mentioned about how it can be enforced. One of the things, though, that was mentioned that I'd like to just briefly talk about here is if someone comes into our home and they bring sludge or something and they dump it on our property, we can hold them accountable. That happened in Southwest Missouri over the last few years. We've held that company coming from another state accountable. And so back in '86, there was Chernobyl, you may have remembered. In 2011, Fukushima, Japan, where pollution came from one country, created one country, went to another. Air pollution and acid rain came from Canada in 1991. Those were prosecuted. So I think states can be held accountable too for things that have been created in their skies or in their state and moved over to Missouri. So we can flesh that out a little bit more. But thank you again, Mr. Chairman and committee, for your indulgence.
Thanks, Senator. This will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 860. No further business coming to our committee. I'm making motion to adjourn. I have a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.
So there you are. That was the a condensed look at the Missouri Senate hearing on SB 860, the bill proposing a ban on any weather modification within the state. Now, whether you see this as a legitimate concern, political theatre, or something in between, one thing is kind of clear. Geoengineering is no longer a theoretical debate. It's now showing up in legislative hearings. So let me ask you this. Should governments experiment with the sky, or should the public have a say first? Let me know what you think in the comments, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye.